rev up your engines. Okay, it's getting hot outside, and you want to stay cool in your car. So today I'm going to show you things you can do yourself to make sure that your air conditioning is going to work this summer season correctly. So I'll explain all about how an air conditioning system works first. Now, air conditioning is just a heat pump. It sucks the hot air out of the cabin of your car, and then it blows that heat using the AC condenser in front of your car's radiator. The condenser is hidden in here in the front, and behind it is the radiator and the cooling fans that cool both the radiator and the air conditioning system. Now in modern cars, of course, it's all computer controlled, but it's still the same basic idea. The refrigerant is compressed by the compressor here. It's cool that a car thing's always, the name means what they actually do. And once the refrigerant is compressed, it goes through the lines into the condenser in the front, where the heat is sucked away by the cooling fans in the radiator system. Then the high pressure refrigerant goes on the skinny little line into the evaporator inside the car. Here's an evaporator. When the high pressure gets into the evaporator, it expands, and as it does, it sucks in the heat from inside your car where you're hot. Now this big tube here, it's connected to the evaporator inside the vehicle, and it takes the refrigerant out and sucks it back into the compressor down here, and the compressor in an endless cycle then compresses it again. It goes through the condenser where it gives off a lot of heat, and then goes back into the evaporator. So it's basically an endless cycle of compressing refrigerant, then heat gets sucked out in the front of the car, then that refrigerant goes inside the dash where it expands in the evaporator and it sucks the heat out of the car, then it compresses that again and goes back to the condenser, which gets rid of the heat. It just keeps sucking heat out of the car. Now, when made correctly, they're very reliable systems, but there are things that you need to check before summer gets hot and it doesn't work anymore and you get mad. And the first thing is, make sure your cooling fans on your radiator are both working fine, because if they don't suck all that air through there, the engine can overheat, the pressure can get too high in the compressor system. You're going to make sure both fans work, so test them like this. Turn the AC on full blast and let it run a few minutes. You want to make sure that both of those cooling fans are coming on and off. They won't stay on the whole time, but you want to make sure they both work and blow good. You can see this one's blowing good, and over here, this one's blowing good too. Now it gets really hot here in Texas in the summer, and I've had many customers over the years say, my AC doesn't seem to be blowing cold enough. And I checked, and what was happening was, maybe one of the fans was blowing, but the other one wasn't. So it didn't get enough airflow. You got to make sure that they're both working fine and blowing a lot of air when it gets hot outside. Now the next thing to check is the cabin air filter. Believe it or not, many modern cars inside the glove box have a filter for the AC system. You just have to fiddle with the glove box. This one's plastic, so it's real easy. Out it comes. And inside this little panel, you take it off. Voila, there's a filter. And this car is parked under a tree, so I got one of these reusable ones. You can see there's a lot of crud coming out of it. You can hose it down and clean it out and use it over many times. And you wouldn't believe how many times I'd have a customer come to me and say, oh, my AC is really working poorly. And what happened was, this thing had been on there for 3 or 4 years, had never been touched. It was full of crud and hardly any air was getting sucked over the evaporator. So check your cabin air filter if you have one. And if you're like me and park under a tree, clean it all the time. And when you're done, the cover just snaps right over and you snap the glove box back in. And this is one of the few times I like plastic, because you can just bend it by your hand and snap it back in place. You don't need a bunch of tools to take the stupid thing apart with. Now the next thing to check, as nutty as it sounds, is the car's battery. And here's why. Now this Lexus may be 17 years old, but everything's computer controlled, even on the AC system. So if you don't have the correct voltage coming in from the battery, that whole system can go bananas and start doing really strange things and not blowing really cold air. You want to have your battery load tested just to make sure it's still good. Takes less than a minute to hook it up and run the test. In this case, it says replace battery because it's too weak. And it makes total sense because my wife said, gee, the AC doesn't seem to be blowing as cold as it used to. Well, it wasn't getting enough power. I'll just change the battery. Now, all cars lose a little bit of refrigerant as time goes on because they have a compressor that has a shaft and there's a rubber seal. The rubber seal has to leak a little so that the oil inside can lubricate the seal. If the seal ran dry, it would burn out really fast. So they all leak a little bit. Some might only need Freon every 10 years or so, but they all eventually run out. A professional uses gauges to see if it needs more refrigerant, but here's a good check. If you find that the passenger side is getting reasonably cool, but you go over to the driver's side and it's not as cold, that often means you're low on refrigerant. Because in this case, the evaporator's inside here. So this side gets to the evaporator first. So the coolest air will come out here, and then when it gets to the other side, it won't be quite as cool. So the air blowing over here won't be as cold as it is on the passenger side. That's often a sign that you need refrigerant added to your system. Now, if you have a set of AC gauges and how to use them, go ahead and add your own refrigerant. But please, don't go buy one of those little cans at the store and start adding it on a guess, because modern systems, they can be off even half an ounce, and they're going to have problems if you put too little or too much. You can destroy a system. So don't just willy-nilly decide, oh, I'm going to try to put some refrigerant in. You can do some serious damage that way. And really, if you want to mess around with this stuff yourself, heck, you can get a set of decent gauges for 50, 60 bucks. Now, the last thing you can check is the condenser itself. Now, this is really handy because on this matrix, the condenser's open. As soon as you open the hood, there it is. If it gets covered in bugs, you can clean it off with a little water, hydrate them, and then squirt them off, and then you're going to have a much more efficient condenser. And heck, since the condenser is in front of the radiator, it's the first thing in a car to get bugs and mud and crud. And sometimes I've seen plastic bags stuck in them. Most cars aren't open like this when you open the hood. Many of them are hidden behind grills and stuff, and you can't see in that well. So get a flashlight, look around. If you see an old garbage bag stuck in there or a bunch of bugs, get it out of the way, because if you lower that airflow, your AC goes whoop, the pressures go too high and it's not going to work right. So now you know how to get your car's AC ready for this hot summer weather. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.